a pretty big team to do it. The other thing is that, you know, we close the programme by saying violent crime is rarer than people think, so don't have nightmares, do sleep well. It's true. You know, the number of violent crimes where there are all these clues lying around and where the assailant is a stranger, is unknown to the victim, they really are much rarer than people think.
But that means that Crimewatch is not really a true reflection of British crime, is it? Because if it were, you'd just be doing car thefts all the time, wouldn't you?
Oh, I plead guilty to that. We're certainly not a true reflection of British crime. We try to say that throughout each programme and at the end of each programme. We take the most serious crimes, by and large, and we do that because I think it would be insulting to the victim of a very serious crime if they saw all this effort being put into a relatively trivial one. I think there is a consensus among society that we ought to put the effort into them catching violent criminals before we put the effort into other sorts of crime.
Right. Well, as Nick said, reconstructions are the core around which Crimewatch UK is built, and these are dramatised versions, as you know, of real crimes. Well, we sent a camera along to a shoot in Liverpool to find out what considerations have to be taken into account when planning such a reconstruction.
Well, the aim of a good reconstruction is to spark off something in somebody's mind, which they may have seen, but they didn't realise at the time that it was of any significance. When they see something on the television made up out of information that is known, suddenly that somebody says, well, I was there, I saw that. And it's just simply by the fact that a filmed reconstruction in the correct places, using relevant cars and sometimes relevant witnesses, has helped them to remember something that they would otherwise have thought was of any importance.
Running, not quiet, running, quiet please.
Action! What I'm reconstructing is the hijack and robbery of a lorry that was taken from a haulage company in Bootle on the 21st of March. It involves 4 actors playing the villains, as it were, and an actor to play the lorry driver, who obviously isn't taking part in this particular reconstruction.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Yeah.
The lorry driver is obviously very upset. He was hijacked, he was held in the back of a van for a good few hours and driven around the Liverpool area, and he doesn't know where he was, and he was obviously very frightened. And his account of what happened will be used as a commentary over the film. Keep walking, and then use them to shut the doors, boom, and then come back into the van, at which point the van's away. All right?
Jack stays in there.
Just remember that everything that goes into reconstruction must be known to have happened. The police are here with us on location at all times to make sure that what we are putting into the film is factually correct. So there is nothing in there that we could have put in because it would make a wonderful shot. If it didn't happen, it cannot be in the programme. So I want you to
Quiet, lads! Running. 70, take 1. Yeah.
Action!
Come on, get out! Come on out! Hang on, cut. Sorry.
Cut. Reset, please. First aid. Yeah.
Go. Okay, quiet again, please. Running. 70, take 5. Let him show it now. Yep.
Action.
Cool, get out.
When you're setting out a reconstruction, one of the most important things to take into consideration is that you never put anything into it that would glamorise, which is perhaps the wrong word to use anyway, any particular crime. There's nothing nice about anything that we reconstruct, and for that reason there are things that are left out which perhaps are very violent, which is just not acceptable to put into any reconstruction. Our role is to help solve crime. It is not to encourage it. So we must at all times be sensible in what we do.
Well, that's a reconstruction that you'll be seeing in Crimewatch tonight. I've been joined by John Stalker, former Deputy Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, now, as you know, an author and broadcaster himself. Now, John, you wrote an article this week in one of the papers saying that when you were a policeman you thought Crimewatch was just what the doctor ordered, but now that you're a commoner garden viewer, you're not quite so keen. Why?
Well, it's not so much Crimewatch, it's the success of Crimewatch. I think that Crimewatch has probably got it, well, it has got it right. It's a godsend to policemen, it's good television. But I wonder sometime, where do we go from here? The very success of Crimewatch, I think, is going to certainly introduce other people who are jealous of its popularity. And it seems to me that we really can't go any further down the road of reconstructions and crime, bringing real crime into people's living rooms without getting gratuitous about it.
But wouldn't you be happy
if
more people start doing it? Doesn't that mean that there's a chance of more crimes being solved?
Well, yeah, you have to look at the basic reason for the programme. It's a popular programme, it's entertainment in many ways. I mean, it's not just a public service sector programme, otherwise 12 million people wouldn't watch it. But I wonder, really, how many of those 12 million people who do watch it, and I know he's had more than 12 million on some programmes, how many actually watch it for some sort of frisson of excitement rather than out of any sense of public duty. There are 1,000 calls. Now, that's marvellous. It's 1,000 calls that the police wouldn't otherwise get. But there's another 12 million people watching it, I think, for the entertainment value. And this certainly isn't a criticism of Crimewatch, because I think that they do responsibly, they do it well, they do it very professionally, and they do it thoroughly. But it's the next step that concerns me, and we don't have to look further than America. There's a program in America called America's Most Wanted, which takes the whole ethos a lot further than Crimewatch. And I know
I've read about it. It is exceedingly gratuitous, I know.
Well, it is. It's reconstructions of crimes almost for the sake of it. And the problem is that that these things feed on themselves. Once you reach a certain standard of reconstruction, it has to stay at that standard. I mean, let's be honest, some of the reconstructions, even in Crimewatch in the early days, I think they do it rather more subtly now than they did in the early days.
Well, let's ask Nick about this whole thing. Nick, where next for Crimewatch, and do you feel that Crimewatch has ever been guilty of going over the score in reconstructions? Because I know that, I mean, we get a lot of calls about that people get a little nervous about the reconstructions.
I think John Stalker's right in the fundamental point he makes, which is that it's only a short step. In fact, it's only a millimetre sometimes away from being responsible to being irresponsible in this field. And I'm not going to sit here and say, look, we've never made mistakes. I'm sure we have. If we look back through some of the things that we've done, I'm sure now we wouldn't do them in the same way. Let me just sort of kill one old canard about this, you know. The idea that the more violent you make the programmes, the more entertaining they are, therefore the more viewers you will get, is quite erroneous.
But your producer has been quoted as saying that. Anne Morris, Nick, she did say that if I made it more violent, I could double the viewers.
Well, I disagree with her. What we're already finding is that you get a tailing off of viewers who are frightened about the programme. This isn't just something which is a piece of fantasy. And people realise that in their souls. It's extraordinary, the difference between putting on a very small amount of violence on Crimewatch and a vast amount of something they know is fiction. We as viewers, when we're viewers, can detect that difference, and we react very, very emotionally to the real violence. Now, the problem we already suffer is that there is clearly a minority of viewers who find that the whole principle of seeing crime, whether we show violence or not, is disturbing, and therefore they don't want to watch. And I think that there really is a mechanism which is in a way self-correcting on this. As long as the programme is very realistic, then at the same time it can't be very violent and keep all its viewers. I think it's easier to introduce more violence if you make it less realistic, if it becomes more fictionalised, more of a sort of a glamorous thing like, well, you name any of the number of detective stories that are on telly at the moment, which are fiction.
We'll pick this up again, Nick, whether Crimewatch, but at the moment we're going to Natalie Anglesey, who's in Ipswich. Natalie.
That's right. In fact, we're in the incident room at Martlesham Heath, where the Suffolk police are currently conducting a murder investigation which will be featured on Crimewatch tonight. And the man masterminding that inquiry is with us. That's Chief Superintendent John Saunders. John, can I just ask you, why did you want to involve Crimewatch?
I think on this particular inquiry, it's one that's been running for 3 months, and with the volume of inquiries that's generated, we need to go out on a more national basis for publicity.
Now, you have actually taken a case to them before. Was that successful?
Yes, this is the 4th occasion that we've been to Crimewatch, and we've enjoyed success in the past, and we're optimistic that this one will bring us success as well.
So very briefly tonight, once we've seen the reconstruction going out, what happens here?
All calls, and hopefully we will get calls from the public, get fed back into the incident room here, and those inquiries are followed up by the teams of detectives that we've got in this particular case, either working down at Brixton or in fact based here from Suffolk. They will
I apologise, we seem to have a problem in Manchester as well this morning. We'll get back to it just as soon as we possibly can. I'm sorry, we do apologise for this morning's breakdown. We'll be back to open air just as soon as we possibly can. Well, we're sorry about this. We seem to have had a technical problem in the circuits, but we will be going back to open air just as soon as we possibly can. We're going straight to them now.
Vigilantes who actually want to solve the crime themselves, can they be more a hindrance?
They can be a hindrance, but as Helen says, you're very able, by exercising your judgment, to sort out those that are relevant to you, and may well already feature in the inquiry anyway.
We heard that the other danger area, of course, was the public's perception of violence. So this is something, obviously, the pair of you are very well aware of.
Yes, that's been a major concern from the very beginning of Crimewatch going on air. I think Nick says, yes, there have been times when all of us have felt uneasy. But actually, some of our best information has come from those cases which have been among the most horrific, and they've actually brought other villains out of the woodwork to shop their mates. Well, supposedly mates, and that's brought the results that we otherwise wouldn't have received. So while we're very conscious of the dangers of it, it's also had its good side.
Well, in the meantime, from us here in Suffolk, back to the Manchester studio.
I'm sorry, we went off air for a few moments while that was going out, so you may have missed some of the discussion about with David and Helen and Natalie, but we're carrying on with the discussion of Crimewatch, which is celebrating its 50th episode tonight, and Linda Cochrane's on the phone from Leicester now. Linda, hello.
Good morning.
What's your question?
Well, I have a friend who's in the CID, and he actually feels that programmes like Crimewatch give away quite a lot of police methods. I was just wondering how widespread this feeling was within the police force.
Right, thank you, Linda. Yes, Nick, you know that we always get these calls, that it provokes copycat crime, that it gives away police methods, that kind of thing. What do you feel about that?
Well, the two things are quite different. If I can put copycat crimes to aside for a moment, just talk about police methods. The answer is I don't know. All we can do as programme makers, we're not police officers, is we ask the police, do you think we should say that? And I have to say, and this is true, we are often the ones that say, I don't think we should be saying this. There are very frequently occasions where the police are quite happy to let viewers see how they operate rather more freely than we feel happy about doing.
And really, and you as presenters say, no, don't, let's not do this.
Well, at least we caution them and say, you sure we should?
I
think they recognise that most people who commit serious crime, frankly, know a great deal already about police operations. And if one's sitting at home and one's never committed a crime, never really thought of committing a serious crime, then, OK, one might be rather naive about them. But I think the police recognise that the knowledge, unfortunately, is already in the wrong places.
When I've done Crimewatch Update, Nick, I'm rather surprised by some of the teams saying the morning after the programme that police officers have called in. They have been watching the programme and that they've called in, usually on things like PhotoFit. Does that surprise you?
Well, it did at the beginning, on the first and second and third programmes. We thought, why were all these police officers ringing in? And also, why are all these supposed villains ringing in? In fact, probably the three best sources of information for Crimewatch numerically, I mean, overall, it has to be ordinary members of the public. But per capita, as it were, it's probably police officers, prison officers, and people who have been in prison themselves as prisoners. Police officers and prison officers, because I mean, it's a big country, this. Police forces are still independent. One will work in Suffolk, another will work in Surrey. And for all the computerisation, there are so many faces, so many facts. It's when somebody in Strathclyde, say, sees something about a crime that happened in Hampshire, and they say, we know that MO, method of operation, we know that guy, I think it's our, it's our chummy from here.
After 5 years, he's using the police jargon and everything. But John Stalker, you don't think that we should be worried about the fact that police are calling in, that we shouldn't have less faith in the police because they're sitting there watching Crimewatch and phoning in?
It doesn't surprise me in the least. Crimewatch is compulsory viewing for most policemen anyway, and I think that it certainly does. It brings together on a national scale information which you would take weeks and weeks to actually read in documents and so on. No, it's almost part of the police briefing operations these days.
Oh, that's very interesting. Pamela Smith is calling from Stockport now. Hello, Pamela.
Yes, good morning, Sue. My question's for Nick, actually, on behalf of the rest of the team, Helen, David and Sue. Have you, as a team, ever been threatened by, your investigations? And obviously, what steps are ensured to, make sure that you're kept safe, you and your families?
Can I say, it's going to sound like a record, this violent crime is really much rarer than people think. No, none of us has ever been threatened. None of us ever fears being threatened. Police officers aren't threatened. There'd be no reason for anyone to threaten us in any case. It's not going to prevent their crime being tackled or prevent their crime being solved.
But isn't Pamela's question rather indicative of the way that the public might romanticise the whole business, Nick?
Yes, if romanticise is the right word, I think it's the opposite, isn't it? We don't live in some, I don't know much about Sicilian crime, perhaps that's exaggerated as well, but we don't live in some sort of mafiosi world in this country, where if you go on television and say, look out for this man, look out for that crime, that you're going to get floods of threats. It just doesn't happen, thank heavens.
So you are safe. We're going back to Ipswich now, to our outside broadcast unit, because we didn't hear a great deal from them earlier. Natalie, hello.
Well, let's hope that Helen will hear her voice being heard this time. What about that? Have you ever been threatened?
No, not at all. Even when I was in the police force and on Crimewatch, I'm afraid I was more of a subject of great discussion and entertainment than of a possible victim of a crime. No, not at all.
And since you've left the police force, you don't feel unprotected?
No, not at all. I feel I'm pretty safe out on those streets.
We still look after.
You still want to look after. What about you, David? It's never interfered with your private life, the fact that you are on television and yet you are still a working officer?
No, in work terms, it's been helpful because people, I think, tend to think they know me already, and that helps in communication, and I think I'm more accepted sometimes. I've been offered information that other people wouldn't want to speak to police officers about because they think I'm in their lounge once every month and they accept me, so it's worked the other way. I think that's helped, hopefully, to break down some of the barriers to people ringing in. The programme has arrested, as a result of information, over 200 people, but another 100 people have been arrested for information coming in not connected with things featured on the programme, which hopefully is not just breaking down the barriers of policemen talking and using television to get their message across, but also the barriers stopping ordinary members of the public talking to us as police officers. I hope they're beginning to share the problem more wholly than perhaps they felt able to do before.
So it's actually personalised the police. You're now human beings instead of just the person you ask the time or the direction.
I should always be the police.
Back to Manchester.
Now, I just want to round off by asking Nick something that we were talking about earlier with John Stalker. Whether Crimewatch, now that other programmes are coming in, what would you do if America's Most Wanted comes in on satellite? Because it is a Murdoch production and it may come in on Sky. Would Crimewatch feel the need to compete? Because you said yourself it is also entertainment as well as public service, Nick.
Yes, there's no conflict of interest between being entertaining and being good public servants. In fact, I mean, I used the word Puritanism earlier. It would be a tremendously puritanical ethic if you believed, oh, we must sit on our hands, gosh, we mustn't enjoy this. If we enjoy it, it can't be good for us. There's no contradiction there. But I think that we have reached the limit. I think we've got the balance about right. I mean, some people may have criticisms. I think on the whole, most people do think we've now got it right. We would not go down the road towards going, if you like, down market, towards introducing more violence, towards introducing things which are spurious to the, excuse me, to the investigations. What would happen if America's Most Wanted and that sort of technique came to British television? I can't predict, but I can predict one thing: we won't adopt that route.
Right. Nick Ross, thank you very much. Have a good show tonight, number 50. John Stalker, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Eamonn.
Sorry about that break in transmission during the Crimewatch item there. Mr. Nixon from Amwell Hearts wants to give his heartiest congratulations to the continuity announcer who held the fort. Don't know who was on duty today, but Mr. Nixon said you did a great job. Continuity announcer is listening today. Right, a few Crimewatch comments. If it helps people get arrested, it must be a good programme, says John Williams from Halifax. John Johnson from Bristol. A lot of people who are unemployed or elderly can't afford to make the call. Couldn't they make it an 0800 number? Probably the same system as operates on Open Air. If you phone in, we phone you back, so you don't really have to pay too much for the call on that point of view. Now, Fraser Clunas from Lerwick in the Shetland Islands has phoned in to say, Club X on Channel 4, I've never seen such rubbish packed into such a short time in all my life. Did anybody see this Club X programme at Channel 4? There's a volunteer seeing Club X. What is Club X all about on Channel 4?
Well, last night, the main thing last night was that these naked women were daubed with blue paint, and then they thrust themselves against this white wall and writhed around, you know, for like an hour to live music and a live audience.
And Fraser didn't enjoy this.
Well, obviously
and there's something wrong with this man, I don't know. Right, also this morning, Jeremy Paxman has announced that he has done his last day with Breakfast Time. Mrs. Hill from Lancashire, Susan Batchelor from Perth, just two of the calls that we have had in, all going to miss Jeremy awfully. The news we have is that Jeremy just feels he's had enough of getting up early in the morning. He's moving on to other projects, and indeed he's taking some time out to write a book, so he will be back on our television screens. Keep the calls coming, 061 814 0424. More of your queries from Mike.
Hello and welcome to our very last visit to Query Corner this series. As usual, we've lots of burning questions to answer, the first one being from Helen Bray in St Helens, who has a very gnawing question. Just when is Roland Rat's birthday? That's the question. Well, we thought we'd get the answer straight from the rodent's mouth, so to speak. So joining us live on the phone now is Ratman himself. Good morning, Roland.
Good morning.
How are you?
Shaft.
Listen, let's get to the bottom line
Morning,
straight
Shaft,
away.
are you all right?
When is your birthday, Roland?
March the 12th.
March 12th? Oh, we've missed it.
Hey?
Right, and how old are you?
I can't tell you that, mate. No, Joan Collins once told me, don't ever tell your age. So it's a secret.
Okay.
I've been in show business for about 6 years, though, at the top. Yeah.
And how old were you when you got into show business?
Shaft, you know. Hey?
How old were you when you got into show business?
Oh, how old was I? Well, that's a secret too, because that'd give my age away, wouldn't it? You're trying to be crafty there, Shafty.
Listen, what are you working on at the moment?
I'm on tour. Yeah, the Roland Rat World Tour. We're in Swindon on Saturday. Yeah. Why we're in Swindon when we're on a world tour? Don't ask me.
And are you doing any television work?
Yeah, we're filming The Rodent Adventures of Sherlock Holmes in the autumn. I'm doing a bit of straight acting, yeah. Yeah, do you want to be in it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'd be more than happy. What role have you got for me?
You'll be out of work soon, won't you?
Yeah,
You'll
this
be
is
back
my
on
last
the tills
one.
at Tesco's, mate. Yeah, old Eamonn's looking smart this morning, isn't he? Normally looks a right tramp. Where is he? Can I say hello to old Eamonn?
Hello.
Hello,
Roland, my friend.
Yeah.
How are you?
I love the suit.
I'm nearly as brown as Mike Shaft today. What do you think?
I love the suit. Where'd you get that, C&A?
Is it okay, gentlemen, if I take my bit of the show back? Thank you very much indeed. Roland, thank you very much indeed down there in London. Now then, Matthew McKnight and Jay Jones from Reading in Berkshire couldn't believe their ears a couple of weeks ago when they heard that John Cleese had appeared in an episode of Doctor Who. The clip was shown on the Paul Daniels show Every Second Counts. So for all those of you who missed the cameo role from John Cleese, here's another look at him in action as the inimitable Eleanor Bron.
John Cleese once appeared in Doctor Who. False. Gotcha. Isn't that great?
Absolutely brilliant. Now then, several open-air viewers rang to say how much they enjoyed seeing the musical comedy duo Nothing by Chance, who appeared on BBC One recently. They all want to know if they can buy either a record or cassette of the music. Well, although it's not yet available in the shops, you can buy a 4-track 12-inch EP by mail order. The address is coming up right after this short clip.
In my secret songs, it was always you, Charlie. For you and me, Charlie. 'Cause I'm something like in love with you, Charlie.
Nothing by Chance. Now, if you want the EP, then send a postal order or cheque for £3.50, made payable to Starward Records, and their address is Oak House, Meriden, Coventry, CV7 7LD. That address, once again, Starward Records, Oak House, Meriden, Coventry, CV7 7LD. Philippa Mitchell from Wallsend in Tyne and Wear is begging us to show a clip of Julian Clary's appearance on Open Air. And now, that was last month. Now, she and her friend haven't been speaking ever since, right? Philippa's letter to us contained no fewer than 1,000 pleases. It seems that they've had an argument and are not on speaking terms at the moment, but Philippa is sure that everything will be hunky-dory again if we can just show a teeny-weeny clip of Julian and a rather handsome chap with him. I don't know who it is. Is this man too outrageous for British television? If you have a view, then give us a call, 061 814 0424. Julian, thank you very much indeed for joining us. You've been looking through some of the calls, haven't you?
Yes, and I've got a call here from Peggy Hoyland from Barnsley, who'd like to congratulate the two actresses in EastEnders, Susan Tully and Letitia Dean. Is that right?
Letitia.
Letitia, I'm sorry, Letitia. Hush my mouth. For their performance. She was on the edge of her seat, was Peggy, and she was saying, don't tell Shell... Well, we don't need to know what you were saying at the time, Peggy. And Colin Connor from Harrogate thought EastEnders was excellent, but he took offence about the use of the word dickhead during family viewing hours.
We'll be getting complaints about that now. Well, Philippa, Julian Clary, also known, of course, as the Joan Collins Fan Club, is appearing this Friday night at Newcastle City Hall in his Mincing Machine Tour 1989. And we've arranged for you to pick up a couple of tickets for the show at the box office, courtesy of Open Air. Who said we're cheap? By the way, it's just been reported that Julian has landed his very own game show on Channel 4. So congratulations, Julian, on that. We know you're going to be brilliant. That is it, I'm afraid, from Query Corner this series, folks. We'd like to say a big thank you to you if you're one of the thousands of people who actually got in touch with us with queries about television over the past few months. Thank you.
OK, a more sobering subject now. The question is, do we have the right to involve animals in our own military destruction? That was the question asked in last night's BBC1 documentary, Animals in War. And judging by the calls that have already come in, are continuing to come in this morning, many of you have found the programme deeply upsetting. Hideous experiments were told off and stories abounded of animals used and abused in wars. And in a moment, I'll be talking to the programme's producer, Michael Waldman. But first, a clip from the programme. For those of you who didn't actually see it, it told a very distressing story indeed.
To test an atomic bomb in the Pacific was, happily, a rare event. But in the laboratories of Brooks Air Force Base in Texas, military scientists perfected the techniques to carry out radiation experiments as often as they wished. Monkeys were the chosen subjects of the many tests to see the effects of radiation on pilots and how much they could take.
At the time of pulse, closed-circuit television allows researchers to view the subject's immediate responses, as well as subsequent performance. The studies arousing the greatest interest are those currently in progress involving the effects of pulsed ionizing radiation on the equilibrium function.
Wherein it pitches and rolls, and the monkey has to adjust to maintain the horizontal, else he gets shocks, electric shocks, through his foot pads. And once he was able to do that, a task which is quite simple for the rhesus monkey, then he was clocked over many hours of flying time, if you will, and then radiated. I did that for 16 years.
Okay, now that's Michael Waldman. The voice you just heard there on that piece of film was from Dr. Donald Barnes, who we'll be talking to shortly from America. Just to begin with, Michael, this is obviously the first time I had ever seen a program of its type, a full-length program on television. Leslie Goodman from Perth has phoned in to say, the program is actually appalling. If these things do actually go on, do we really need to see them?
That could be asked of many subjects. I think it's important that television does show things that are done in our name. It's government funding. We are involved in deciding what wars to fight, how they should be fought. I think within certain limits, these things should be shown.
Okay, let's get a view now from Charlotte Martin, who's phoned in from Birmingham. Good morning, Charlotte.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Charlotte. Now, what did you think of this programme?
Well, firstly, can I just congratulate you, Michael, on bringing this kind of thing to everyone's attention. I really do disagree with the last caller, the person you just spoke about, because I think that we all should know about things like this, because that's the only way we can, well, help put a stop to them. But getting back to the programme now, I just found the one experiment involving pigs extremely distressing. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I just wondered whether this experiment was still going on.
Okay, Charlotte, a lot of people phoned in about that this morning as well. Michael, let me just explain. These were pigs which were anaesthetised. Where was it, Sweden?
In Sweden.
In Sweden. And then they were shot at, so surgeons could actually see what a real bullet wound looked like before they went into the field of war. Right?
That's right. The question you ask, does it still go on? As far as I know, yes. Not regularly, but intermittently. We filmed that late last year. It's obviously a very graphic incident. I think there's an important point here that I might perhaps surprise you in saying that although we filmed that and showed it with a view to revealing something that happens in Sweden and in other countries, the Swedes at least had the honesty to let us in, which is itself shows something about the Swedish attitude. The fact is that there is an argument, I don't think even that is black and white, appalling though it was to see that if you have soldiers going off to war and you have doctors having to treat them who are not taught as military surgeons, then how do they learn? Of course, there's an ambiguity here. There was an American surgeon who said he went through this training and it was useless. But the Swedes honestly think that it's necessary.
They do, and you made that point in the programme. So, Charlotte, if they don't perform this practice, how do they learn?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just wonder about whether there are more humane ways of doing it. I didn't feel that was the most humane way of doing it.
Okay, this affected Charlotte, Michael, obviously watching this. You were there during the filming. Did it affect you?
Yes, it did. I found it shocking, worrying, and I hope that was reflected in the way we showed it. I mean, what I've said is just that there are arguments on the other side. I found that it was regrettable, to say the least.
Okay, we have another call. Jean Flintan on the line. Hello, Jean.
Hello, Michael.
Hi, Jean.
Well, my question's been partly answered.
Yeah.
I would like to say that I think it's very brave to make a film like this, that people should know what's going on. And the question of pigs, actually, it is still going on in the Brecon Beacons, not far from here, because apparently pig skin is the nearest to human skin. This is why they are used. I mean, I've always been totally opposed to any cruelty of an exploitation of animals, having lived for most of my life on small farms where animals are treated as almost as pets. And I belong to a lot of animal welfare societies. But at the back of my mind has always been the question that what if I were told that an experiment on an animal would save the life of, say, my husband or a child? Yeah. Would I have such noble thoughts then? And, you know, I wondered whether, you know, the producer went through this as well. Did he have to wrestle with his conscience you know, what was his feeling at the end of it all? Did the means justify the end?
I think the point of this programme was that it was exclusively looking at the military use of animals, and we left the purely medical to one side. That's a whole different issue. I think that in the military field, there are many uses of animals which are not justifiable. I think that was plain in the film. I think, though, that the whole business of war is plainly ghastly. How you fight wars and what resources you bring to the military are very difficult questions, and it's probably wrong to just assume that everything they do is wrong and they should never use animals.
Well, a man who certainly wrestled with his conscience, which we saw on the programme last night, was Dr. Donald Barnes. He appeared on it, an American scientist. He now joins us on the line from Washington. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Good morning. Doctor, for people who actually didn't see the programme last night, what work were you carrying out on animals for the military?
It was my job to define the post-irradiation effects of pulsed ionizing radiation. That is, to look at the non-human animal as a model for the human, and then to radiate that animal from a fast burst reactor that simulated the radiation that might come from a nuclear explosion, and then to determine the behavior or physiology of the animal after radiation in an attempt to determine what might happen to the human being.
Now, obviously, Doctor, yours is a profession of ethics, certainly as far as humans are concerned. Do the same ethics apply when one is dealing with animals?
It's an excellent question, and the answer is a resounding no. There's an anthropocentric bias that draws a definitive line between the human and other animals, so that other animals become tools in the laboratory and are not recognized for their sentience or for their ability to live in some kind of equality on our shared planet.
Yeah. I just have a question. We have questions coming in all the time. Lynn Horseman from Whitby. She says she's glad that the programme has been shown, but she wants to know, if a member of the public mistreats an animal, he is liable for prosecution. If the same person tortures an animal as a profession, he's just doing his job. How can one be wrong and the other right? As a scientist, can you answer that?
I cannot any more than she can. One of the serious problems we have is to open up the laboratories to public scrutiny. As Michael pointed out earlier, most of the experiments here and in the UK are done with public monies, with taxpayers' funds, and they should have a say over what goes on in local and states and so forth. Laws should apply to them. Eamonn, could I take a moment to respond to that wound lab issue that was so discussed before?
Certainly, Doctor.
Well, you know, that's not an atypical situation. The armed forces shoot goats and other animals over here quite regularly. They did shoot dogs, actually, up until a few years ago when public pressure got so great that the Department of Defense banned the use of dogs and cats in military research, so now they've switched to goats. I've researched this quite thoroughly, and this concept of the pig skin being near to humans is just absolutely fallacious. The fact is that in mild erythema, mild burns, there are similarities, but when one is talking about the kinds of wounds that are being inflicted by a high-powered rifle, there are alternatives.
Yeah.
There are alternatives in the hospital, in the fact that we have wars going on across the country, and there are humans that require help, and people can certainly learn on humans.
Doctor, I would like you to hang on the line there because we've got calls coming in all the time, and if you could just listen to some of the points that are coming up, and I would like to go back to you before we finish this discussion, but I'd like now to go to Hearts. Debbie Hayter on the line there. Hello, Debbie.
Good morning, Eamonn.
Hi, Debbie.
Good morning. My point really is, again, about the pigs, and I do feel that the BBC should have issued a warning before the programme went out that viewers might have found some scenes distressing.
Well, there was a warning during the programme, Debbie.
Well, I must have missed that. And I sat through the whole programme, and when the laboratory experiments with the pigs came on, I found it really upsetting. I sat through the rest of my programme peeking through my eyes, and it spoilt a very interesting programme. I found it really upsetting.
There was a warning, wasn't there, Michael?
Well, there wasn't a warning before the programme started as such. Within the programme, we said what you're about to see is a practice carried on in this country and in many others, indicating it was going to be rather special. Perhaps we should have been stronger. I take your point.
Right, OK, let's go to Cornwall. Adrian Cooper on the line there. Hello, Adrian.
Hello.
Hi, Adrian.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the producer very much indeed for such an informative program and for raising the curtain on a hideous aspect of animal abuse which governments have obviously discreetly kept undisclosed, including some material, no doubt, that remains too shameful for disclosure. I did wonder, however, whether your research suggested that the sheer speed of modern, highly sophisticated weaponry and warfare equipment meant that animals could not or would not be used in future wars, God forbid. In other words, has the computer taken over so that the animal role for aggressive purposes has been superseded and thereby lessened the foul experimental work in medical research and the defense field?
Yes, Adrian. Actually, this seems to be the supreme irony. In this age of technical sophistication, why still this reliance on animals? As Adrian points out there, have they been superseded? Do we still need to use them?
Well, we do, and that, as the programme showed, that there were Swiss pigeons, the Swedish pigs, the American dolphins. That is what was so surprising in what the research brought out. And Lizzie Becker and Melissa Rames, the assistant producers, came up with extraordinary facts that surprised me as the producer of the programme to find this. Before we started, I didn't realise there was so much. The answer to the question is that I think it continues.
The other thing that absolutely amazed me, the fantastic use of archive footage that you made in the programme. The attitude as conveyed through the old newsreel films. Oh, dogs going off to war, all jolly music, whatever, whatever. People would have accepted that, indeed, as much as maybe 15, 20 years ago. But certainly it seems abhorrent watching it now.
Yes, the tone has completely changed.
Yeah.
That's why we tended to use the archive film with the sound of the contemporary sound to show that it was so different.
Quick comment from Debbie Daly from Nottingham. Debbie?
Hello. After watching the programme, the one thing that came to mind is that this looks like a need for animals in warfare, but with the pigs, the dolphins and that, has there been any positive steps from you that have actually come from your programme to actually stop these atrocities?
Yeah, lots of people phone in and say, what can we do now that we've seen all this?
That's not for me to say directly, I suppose. Politicians are the people at the end who have some influence over what the military establishments do in this country, and other countries, not for us.
Dr. Barnes in Washington, in 15 seconds, can you tell me why you stopped doing what you did for a living?
I stopped because I was ordered to do an experiment that was scientifically invalid for funding reasons. As I began to fight that, I began to reevaluate what I'd been doing. Even if we knew what happened to the monkey after irradiation, it has no relevance as to what we do in terms of the human situation. I was appalled and embarrassed by the fact that 16 years in the laboratory had produced nothing, so I began looking at it more closely.
Right, Dr. Barnes in Washington, we must leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution to this discussion this morning. Michael Wallman, congratulations on an excellent and thought-provoking programme last night. Rounding up the programme, here's Susan.
And tomorrow on Open Air, our special guest in the spotlight will be Sarah Brightman. She'll be talking to Mavis about her professional and private life as Mrs. Andrew Lloyd Webber. We're also going to be looking at Survivor's Guide, the controversial new series on Channel 4, and asking its producer and presenter if the advice it gives to young viewers is too explicit. And to celebrate the end of the series of Open Air, a special top 20 of your complaints. What have you hated most on TV this year? We'll be back at our usual time, 9:05, 11 tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Kilroy is planning a programme on the effect children have on a marriage. They'd like to hear from you if your partner reacted badly to children, or if your relationship broke down as a result of children. Perhaps children can actually save a marriage. The number to ring is 01 811 2211. And the lines are now open.
What magazine is celebrating the start of a new colour lifetime section packed with celebrities, travel and expert tips? Who is giving away this superb camera to the reader with the winning shots? Where can you meet Liz, who picked new parents for her own daughter, and read about her agonising choice? And what is still the only 7-day guide to BBC TV and radio programmes? Radio Times, the one to watch out for.
Because Open Air was shorter than planned, we've an extra programme in 5 minutes, Wildlife on One, in which David Attenborough explores the mystery of the impossible bird. Now we go to the newsroom for the news with Moira Stewart.
From the newsroom, the main stories at 10 o'clock. The government in Panama has annulled last Sunday's presidential election. No result has been officially announced, but it's widely believed that General Noriega's candidate was heavily defeated. One man died and an opposition candidate was clubbed by militiamen during demonstrations. The United States has condemned the violence.
With no sign of General Noriega accepting the result, there have been renewed protests by the opposition. Their demonstrations brought troops onto the streets, with water cannon and tear gas being used against the crowds. The victory of the opposition had been acknowledged by everyone except General Noriega and his supporters. Their attempts at ballot rigging were revealed by teams of international observers, including a delegation from the United States. According to them, the opposition leader, Guillermo Endara, won the election with 2/3 of the popular vote. Now the president of the country's electoral tribunal has annulled the elections, claiming that the opposition stole and destroyed ballot papers.
The American Secretary of State, James Baker, is meeting the Soviet leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, in Moscow. Mr. Baker handed the Soviet leader a letter from President Bush, and Mr. Gorbachev hinted that he may have something to say about a superpower summit. Earlier, after talks between Mr. Baker and the Soviet Foreign Minister, Edward Shevardnadze, it was announced that the superpowers would resume negotiations on strategic nuclear weapons. 6 people have been injured, 2 of them seriously, by a terrorist bomb in West Belfast. The device, which was hidden behind a metal hoarding in the Falls Road area, was detonated as an army foot patrol went past. 1 soldier took the full force of the blast. He is now in hospital with serious stomach wounds. Another member of the patrol and 4 civilians were also hurt.